Welcome to another edition of Great British Churches. You find us today at St Nicholas Church, Hintlesham, which is a parish church about 5 miles north of Ipswich and about 8 miles from the county town of Hadley, on an extremely busy road. But let's go and have a look. If you've watched our previous video of St Mary's Church, Washbrook, we're only about a mile away, but the parishes back in medieval times would have only been 2 or 3 miles across. It's said the average person never travelled until they're coming in the railways more than about 7 miles from their home, unless they were in the forces or they work for Great Estate who moved them. But let's go in and have a look. Got a beautiful porch here. Like all these little churches, these are an absolute little treasure trove of history, but can't see what it says on that brass. Let's take you through. Let's go into the chancel, and I'll hand you over to Mel.
Hi, you've actually found me in the nave, Paul, not the chancel.
Not the chancel. So the chancel's up there and this is the nave.
Yep.
Right, got that clear? Told me, didn't it?
I did tell you. Right, just bear with me. I thought he was going to do more of a walkthrough around the outside, but obviously...
It is tipping it down.
It's tipping it.
It's British summertime.
We always look at churches in the rain, don't we?
Yep, it is true.
Okay, so... welcome to St Nicholas at Hintlesham. Now I'm going to take you here. Now this is amazing. Right, I'm just going to back up here a bit so you can see it. This is a gallery and it houses the organ. And yes, there are some funerary hatchments on there. So I should tell you more about those, and oh, hang on a moment, I've got them. No, I haven't. See, I have to do everything one-handed because Paul just sort of stands there.
I'll stand there. I'll be your book. I'll be your rest. How's that?
I want to look for the details on that.
Okay, let's have a look. Are we going to have domestic in there?
We probably will have a domestic. Yes, we normally do on these trips because he can be a tad lazy. But if you walk under the gallery, you just see this absolutely amazing doorway. And if he can find it on the notes, he might shout out how old this doorway is.
The doorway?
I think it's about 18th century by the looks of things.
1776.
1776 this was made. It's absolutely beautiful, it really is. And you can actually go into this little area here, which is sort of like a little kitchenette area. And there you've got the stairs that take you up into the gallery to the organ. Absolutely beautiful. So, Paul, tell me about the hatchments on the gallery.
Okay, the hatchments.
And so let me go up here and I'll see if I can get them on the camera while you talk about them.
Okay, the one on the left of the film is St Francis Burrell, who died in 1846.
Just going to try not to trip over the font. There we go.
You knew about the colours on these, Mel, and what they mean to the left and the right of
yeah.
I can't remember it.
Yeah, it's... I think, and I can't remember, if I got it wrong, I'm sure somebody will tell me. But if the left hand is white, it means that the man is still living, and the right hand side is black, is the woman. The woman, I believe, is the sinister side. Now, Paul knows which side a sinister is.
Sinister is left.
Sinister is left. So obviously is the females on the left and the males on the right.
Yeah, you can just imagine the Romans, can't you, walking through because right is dexterous. Sinister's dexterous. Right, the right-hand hatchment is Captain Heneage Lloyd of Coldstream Guards, who died in 1776. Actually looks a lot brighter and cleaner than the one that's nearly a century newer, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Now, these would have sort of been hung up in the in the homes of these people for about 6 months to a year, something like that. And then they would have been transported to the church to be hung up here. I'm sorry, I'm not looking around putting this camera. Now, here we've got something that's truly wonderful. And I'm going to stand back a bit, so hopefully you'll be able to see it. There is the remains of a medieval wall painting, and unfortunately, you can't really see anything.
We think it is of St Christopher. In fact, some of the books you've got. Who was that book you've bought? A century-old book on Suffolk churches.
Courtly.
The chap called Courtly. He
Yeah.
seems to think that's St Christopher.
And it probably is, because it's right opposite the door. And if you had a St Christopher painted in the church, it would be opposite the entrance door.
But the whole church, and most churches before the Reformation, would have been absolutely brightly painted with stuff. This would have been an assault on the senses. If you were a farm labourer,
Yeah.
you know, in the 12th and 13th century when this church was originally built. I mean, if you look up even higher there near that lamp, there's there's a scale look. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. It is. It's truly wonderful. And you can just about see a border. I think that's probably the scale that Paul's talking about, but I call it a border, he calls it a scale. So we won't have a domestic about that, will we?
No.
I forgot to show you, we're just going to go back under the gallery, because I just spotted the most wonderful perpendicular style window there. It hasn't got any stained glass. There's a little bit of glass in the 4 lights at the top there. I don't know if you can see them, but they're just like, it's like very pale green glass with a leaf carved into it. There is some lovely modern glass in here. Now we'll take you round to see that. That's on the other side of the church. So we're going to go round, and I'm hoping Paul's going to come with me because he's got my notes.
The glass in the south, I don't know, that's the south one, isn't it? I'll hand you back the notes for a moment.
This is the north aisle. You can see what I have to put up with. Now, see, we've got some more perpendicular. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. That's possibly medieval glass in there. Absolutely lovely. I love medieval glass, I really do. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this on film. That window there, you can actually see, leans out at the top. Oh, it's a bit on the wonky side.
The whole side of that church, both the nave and chancel Williams.
Now, this roof is 15th or 16th century. And when it was done, they actually blocked up the windows of the clerestory on this side. Up the top. I will show you that in a moment. But if we just walk along here, we've got a little piscina here. And that's just got that little trefoil arch there. Absolutely sweet.
What was a piscina for now?
It was for the priest to wash the hands and any it was for the priest to wash their hands when he stops interrupting me, and for them to wash all the chalices and the goblets and things like that they use for communion. So there probably would have been an altar here at some point. So there we go. There's the big man doing what he does normally. He's looking at the ceiling. Right, okay.
Would you like me to turn the page?
I will do in a moment. So the glass that was in these sapphire windows are actually made and engraved at the Ipswich School. What school that is, I don't know, because we've got several. I would imagine it'd be the art school or somewhere around that way.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and they've got... Sorry, it's not those ones. They're the north ones over here. Over here. I can't tell my north to my south at the moment, can I?
Compass on.
No, I wouldn't want you to get up from where you're sitting. Right, so these are from the Ipswich School. And as you can see, they've got engraving of people who have been married, baptised, or funeral. it's absolutely amazing that there's this record of them in this glass. Like we've got Daphne Fenton, born 1920 and she died in 1983. It's beautiful, and it goes on to that window there. Right, now I've got to be careful because there's a step here and I'll end up falling off it. Right, so we're going to go up here. Now there is no chancel arch left anymore. Whoops, sorry about that, I just banged into something. There is no chancel arch here anymore, but we do have a modern equivalent, if you like. It's just this modern beam. If I can get it right, you can see there's a big cross up there. Now, it would have had a rood screen. Now, the rood is the Saxon word for cross. So therefore, we've still got a cross up there. So I suppose you could argue that it's a rood screen. Or it could be just a simple parclo screen. But if we can walk past Paul, and then says to us, do not enter. It's just as well, because he'd probably try and get up there. I don't know if you can see that, but that is so very, very dark up there. And it's the steps for the rood loft. So you would have had a big rood screen along here, walking into things. You'd have had the big rood screen there, going across. And then you probably would have had choir boys at the top there singing.
You can see the openings still up there.
Yep, I was just getting to that bit. So that's the opening up there. And if you look how tiny that is, you couldn't have got any adults through there, I shouldn't have thought. It would have been very, very small. And we've got a sort of like a brass epitaph here. The Lord redeemeth the soul. I cannot read all of that, I really can't. It's absolutely stunning. Here we've got a corbel. Now, we don't know how old it is. We don't think it's in its original spot, but it is of a green man. And if you look, you can see, it's quite scary to look at, to be honest. You can see there's leaves coming out of his mouth, there's his tongue in the middle, and there's a leaf either side of that. Absolutely. It's quite scary.
What's the name of the green man? Because they're in a lot of churches we see, aren't they?
Don't really know what they are. There is a story, and there's the devil there, he's pulling funny faces. There is a story that the green man is Adam, as of Adam and Eve. When they got expelled from the Garden of Eden, they stole some seeds from the good and evil tree. And when Adam died, his son planted them in Adam's mouth, and the tree sprang forth. And it's also the tree that was the wood from that made the cross where Christ was crucified. But there are people who say that is what the story is. There are people who say, no, it isn't. I honestly don't know. I am trying to find out. Now we've got some glass here. I don't think it's medieval, but you can see how old this church is, just from the thickness of the walls. It is so old. And then we've got a mishmash of flooring here. We've got bricks, we've got tiles, flagstones, and we've even got some ledger stones over here as well. You can see we've got a priest's door there. So, oh yes, I was going to show you this up here. Now this church has got a clerestory, and you can quite easily see those. There's three over there, 1, 2, 3, there we go, we've got those there. But when we look at this side, because the north side was re-roofed and it was done at a steeper pitch, they had to block in the windows. And it's such a shame, because I would imagine that would have cast in so much more light. It really is, it's wonderful. So, we don't have a chancel arch, we don't have a rood screen. Now, as I said, the rood screen it had the cross on there, which is the Saxon word for rood. Rood is the Saxon word for cross. So when the Reformation come in, you had people like William Dowsing in the Civil War who would come in saying, you can't have this, that and the other, and they would have to take it down. He'd either do it there that day, or he'd give them a certain time to do it, and then he'd send himself or his deputies back to have a look. And the rood screen would have separated the congregation from what happened around the altar. And by getting rid of the rood screen, it brought the Mass into the congregation, which is absolutely amazing. So when you come here, we're coming up to the vestry door. It's now an office from what we can see. So you've got the vestry door. And before we get to that, I'm just going to show you this. This, we think, is slate. And it is for...
Want me to read that from the...
Please, you know I get my thesis.
Yes.
Read it from there.
Okay.
And you can read all of it. I'll hold it here. You can read it.
Here lieth interred the body of Captain John Timperley, Esquire, third son of Nicholas Timperley of the county of Suffolk, who departed his life on the 28th day of January, Anno Domini 1629.
Day for our wedding anniversary.
He married a daughter of Richard Pugh of Bletchington in the county of Oxford, Esquire, whose pious memories his loving wife caused this memorial. Too little to express either his desire or her affection. Let others' tombs, which he glad is bestows, write gold in marble.
Grief affects no shows. There's a true heart entombed him, and that bears a silent and sad epitaph writ in tears.
And if we just look again at him, you can see the military, we've got the drums, we've got suits of armour. Look at the helmet.
Yeah.
That's
Civil War, isn't it?
Oh, it's before then. It's before 1629.
Well, if you look at the shape of that helmet, sort of...
It's that era, but it's before. This is sort of Charles I, just before.
Yeah.
And if you look at him.
He's very Charles I looking, isn't he?
He's a bit of a tart, really, isn't he?
He is. He's a fault.
Boots with the spurs. Look, this bloke fancied himself.
Probably not. I think it's probably the fashion he was going for there. So
can I? Because I'm excited and I've got my dander up with having a little discovery. You don't want to go through there?
No, I don't like going through there.
I'm going to go into, what's this called, the sanctuary?
This is the sanctuary, yeah. So I'm just going to talk about this, and then I'm going to pass the camera to Paul. Hopefully he won't film me at the same time, but he probably will. Now, this is the vestry, and I'm just going to pan back a bit so you can see the whole door. It's not a very big door. It's certainly not very wide. I don't know if the big fella would fit in it, to be honest.
He would.
He would if he breathed in. Anyway, that's the vestry. And it's possible it was a little chapel. Now, there was a big family here called the Timperleys, as you've seen from that epitaph there. Now, it's possible that if this is a chapel, they would have sat there, and they would have sat away from the rest of the congregation, the hoi polloi. The farm labourers, the servants, the maids and all that, they wouldn't have wanted to sit with them. So they would have sat here. But so they could take part in the communion, they had a squint. I'm just going to pass the camera to Paul so he can actually
No
film
problem
that.
at all. Let's have a look. This is amazing. I'll just move this candlestick out of the way. But if you look down there, there's a little tunnel that goes down. There's a glass on the front of it, but as you can see, it's an ecclesiastical office at the moment in there. If you look at that, it goes right through the wall and into what was the chapel in there. So if you can imagine the great and the good in the days, I mean, these people were good. Let's have a look. There's another Timperley memorial above it. Look at that. That's knock your socks off, isn't it? Oh yeah, there we go. But that's amazing. So if you sat in there and you look from that angle, what do you see when you turn round? You get a straight view of the altar. Now, even this altar is Stuart period, so this is just after was Jacobean. I've been corrected, but here is the altar. The stone at the back, if we can just have a look at that.
We think that might have formed part of the rood screen, and it's now the altar screen.
Because it's been moved back, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And if we can, what happened was the church. I mean, can you just, if I do a view down the church, if you can see where the altar table is now, this is the great difference between the Catholic Church. The Catholicism ended here, sort of from the sort of period of Henry VIII and the few.
The Catholic Church has never had a pulpit either. So
No.
it was taken down and the pulpit was put in.
And that's right.
You can tell the difference.
So rather than the priest standing up here on this table with his back to the congregation, they're sitting down there looking through the screen which has separated people. Above there would have been a loft, like a balcony, a bit like the one with the organ at the other end. And there would have been choristers singing who'd have come up that little chair. I just have to put this in there. Those sort of staircases reminds me of the film The Monty Python and the Life of Brian. If somebody went running up that stairs now, they're going to fall there and hope that a flying saucer would pick them up before they crashed into the church floor. But there would have been a loft up there. Do you want me to do the side?
Yeah, I was just trying to find the details about this. You probably get it anyway.
Let's have a look at this memorial.
We've got a very worn casino there.
Yes, let's look at
that.
There we go. Let's have a look at this. I'm just going to move this candlestick out of the way. We'll put them back before we leave.
That's 14th century, that casino.
Look at that. And we think the church, the origins of it are 11th, 12th century.
I know the wall has been bashed about a bit to put this tomb in that you're going to see.
Yes, you can see that. Look, it's even got lead around it.
There's something else been there before.
Yes, most definitely. This is another timply tomb. I'm going to show you the top of it. Isn't that just amazing? Look at that skull.
Well, you see, the skull is to remind people living, looking at it, that one day this is going to happen to them too.
Yep.
And so you've got, this is a monument for Thomas Timperley and his son Nicholas with their respective wives. And that's what that is all about. Thomas died in 1593, and the little alabaster figures that kneel in pairs across prayer desks. And they've got the children group behind them.
Yes, if we can have a look. There's one. Let's have a look at the little fella, and there is the other.
Yeah, and the plinth and the corners are inlaid in colour, and there are 3 shields of arms on the top there.
Let's have a look.
So there's obviously the Timperley coats of arms.
And these were the big landowning family of the area.
But it's marble, and it's absolutely astonishing to think that in the day that this was made, 1593, that they had this absolutely wonderful marble, and it's many different kinds of marbles inlaid with different types.
And this would have come from Italy, I would imagine.
Probably.
But if we have a look in there, let's just have a look and see if we can see all the children stood behind. I love these things. I mean, we both do, don't we? Because here we go. This is like taking a 1960s photograph. You get an idea.
1960s photograph? You mean a 1590s?
No, look, listen to me. Stop interrupting. I don't interrupt you much. But if you look at this is the fashion of the day. Let's look at these people. They would have been.
Don't get seasick.
They would have been the fashion of the day. And what are we talking in this time? Elizabeth I?
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, Elizabeth I, these are local people, and they look the part. He looks like St Walter Riley. She looks like Queen Bess. And if you look at both sides of them, they're just amazing. The ruffles on their around the necks and the hairstyles.
Yeah, it is. I know what you mean when you say it's like a photograph. It's a captured moment in 1593.
It is, and those kids, they're just little versions of their parents, really, aren't they?
And they're all sweet and demure.
A bit like me.
Yeah. You know,
Hang on, I'm going to pass you the camera because I'm going to put the candlesticks back
before we get found out.
Before Vic comes in and thinks we're making off.
You see, and here we've got another archway. I know this wall has been chopped about a bit to fit this in, But there's something that was there before. Don't know what it is. There's not enough of it to sort of reveal it. So we're just going to go down here, and some lovely stained glass. And I tell you, if you sit down into the nave and then you look up, the sun coming through these two windows actually gives it a lovely warm light. It is absolutely amazing, this church. It really is.
And it's a bit of a grim day, isn't it?
It is a very grim day.
It's a sort of way it gets you wet as well, which is
Yes.
downside.
Yeah, now if I give Paul that, he might be able to tell you about the font, which we're going to get to. So I don't know if you can see, I didn't tell you about this bit in here. Now, we've told you about the roof being done on the other side of the church here. But here, this we think is a lot older. And it's absolutely lovely. And you've got quite old looking pews. Don't quite know how old they were, probably 17th, maybe 18th century. And you've got the fleur-de-lis on here as well as the headstops on the pews. Absolutely beautiful. If we go down to here, where they'll obviously have some sort of Sunday school going on. We've got some pews here that are slightly older or slightly different. And they've got the traditional poppy heads. Where are you? There. I'm a little bit closer because it's a bit gloomy around here. It does have a bell, the church. We heard it ring a little while ago, 12 o'clock. So it's getting to be my lunchtime. And then one.
Just important point. We have a historical research issue. We've got absolutely nothing in here about the font.
No.
Normally the fonts are a good key to history of any church.
Yeah.
But come and read it, because you're good at roses and
Ah,
come on, get
thanks.
in there.
I would say.
Thank you.
Are you sure there's nothing in there?
Yeah.
I'm sure I wrote something about that.
Vestry.
But if you look, you've got some quite. Is that a lion?
Yep.
You've got a lion down there. You've got a cherub. There's another lion. I think it could be 16th, possibly 17th century. I really am not sure. I am not willing to risk any money on that one.
But Carl, there's a rose on there. You are the woman for roses.
It's a Tudor rose. It's a Tudor rose. So from that, I would say it's 15th, 16th century.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm basing the 16th century thing on, is because it's got the Tudor rose on there. It's also got shields. Just going to take you around. There's another rose there. And there's a shield.
Because we often say on these videos, we find as many that have been defaced and chipped about over the years because of the images that were on them, and we don't.
They were only defaced because of the images. These are pretty simple. They're roses. So if it is Tudor rose and it was for the monarch, then they would have stayed because he was going to become the head of the new English church.
Yeah.
But if you had saints and angels on there, then it would have been damaged. It would have been defaced. You know, they would have come in and demolished parts of it. You see, you've got lions down there as well. I'm going to say 16th century.
Yeah.
I really am. And you've got this lovely step here that I keep tripping over as well, which is not good.
It's worth having a look inside, actually. There's still a bit of water in there, and saying about why these things are so big. Something I didn't realise, we both didn't until quite recently.
Yeah, they were big so that the priests, when they were doing the baptism, would dunk the whole child. Now, my daughter screamed enough when that was her baptism, and she had 3 drops of water on her forehead. But can you imagine, in the middle of winter, there's no heat in this church. You've got this wriggling baby and you're going to plunge them into cold water. And the reason they wanted to plunge the whole child into the water was so you covered every inch with holy water, because they felt that that would be enough to stop the devil getting in. Now, I'm just going to have a quick word before we go about the arcades. They're different, you see. So like this one here, it's a round pier, and it's got a cusped top there. And it goes up, and it comes down. And it comes down to a hexagonal one. And then the next one is a round one. But they're not in pairs. If you look at that round one there, and then you look at the opposite one, it's hexagonal. And then there's a round one next to that one, which is opposite the hexagonal one of that. So I think that is absolutely amazing. It really is. This church really is well worth visiting.
This icon,
I'm now doing it.
Okay, right.
Oh, don't you just love a man that knows everything?
I know nothing, but I keep spotting things.
Oh, and here we've got a list of the rectors since 1160.
1160.
And this is when the church was built, 1160. That is amazing. That really is. Mind you, Rainius, he was here for a long while.
Who's Rainius? Oh yeah,
The second one,
wasn't he?
50 years.
Good Lord, yeah.
And this, then that time, whoops, I haven't knocked off the wall. Have I?
Adam de Filby.
So we got up here. Did I say this was 1930s?
Yes, I think it does start on the brass plaque.
Is there a brass plaque?
Underneath at the bottom, it says about it.
Right, fair enough. Oh yes,